Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to not just skim the surface, but really dig into the foundations of knowledge. And today, wow, we've got a big one. We're tackling the complete formal roadmap of research methodology.
Yeah, it might sound a bit, dry, maybe. But honestly, the sources you sent over, they detail these 13 specific steps. It's the whole journey, right? From just an initial idea, that little spark, all the way to getting something published. This is basically the rule book for how we turn, like, hunches and opinions into solid evidence.
Exactly. And our mission today, it's kind of a shortcut, isn't it? We're not just going to list all 13 steps like reading a manual. We want to pull out the really critical bits, the things that save you time, the steps people often gloss over. We want to give you those nuggets that can prevent months of, well, wasted effort. And at the same time, arm you with a better way to think critically about information.
hmm We've basically grouped those 13 steps into 4 main phases, just to make it easier to digest, we're calling them. Foundation, blueprint, execution, and integrity. Think of it like, I don't know, intellectual engineering. You can't build something solid without sorting the foundation and getting the blueprint right first.
Right. And to keep this from getting too abstract, we're going to use a running example that came up in the sources. It's about research on solar panel efficiency, specifically in cold climates. It's a really good way to see these methodological choices in action.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into phase 1 then, building the foundation. This covers the first 3 steps, and honestly, this is where so many research ideas kind of fall apart early on.
Okay, step 1, identifying the problem. Seems obvious, but it's tricky, right? It's the difference between just being interested in something and having a precise researchable question. Like, you can't just say, oh, solar panels don't work well in winter. That's too vague. You need something focused, like investigate the performance of photovoltaic panels in low-temperature conditions in northern regions of, say, Canada. Specifics matter.
Absolutely. And here's the first, I'd say, absolutely crucial time-saving nugget from this step. It's the feasibility check. Seriously, we see brilliant ideas just die because people skip this reality check. You have got to check 4 things before you really commit. Do I actually have the time for this? Do I have access to the data I need? What about the resources, equipment, software? And importantly, do I or my team have the required expertise?
Okay. So if I want to study panel efficiency way up north, but then I find out all the weather data is locked behind a huge paywall, or the special testing gear I need costs like $1 million.
Then you pivot immediately. You have to adjust the problem then. Because if you spend 6 months planning a study that you fundamentally can't carry out because of these constraints, well, those 6 months are just gone. Doing that feasibility check up front, that's probably the best investment you can make in the project's success.
That makes perfect sense, and it flows right into the next stage, doesn't it? Once we figure out what we can feasibly study, we need to see if someone else has already done it, or maybe part of it. Which brings us to step 2. Reviewing the related literature.
Exactly. 2 main goals here. 1, obviously, don't reinvent the wheel. Avoid duplication. But maybe more importantly, you need to build on what's already known. You dig into the academic databases, find all the relevant studies on solar panels, and you're specifically looking for what's missing, the research gap. So if, 90% of studies looked at panels in sunny California, the gap is obvious. What happens in places that hit -30?
Okay. And while you're finding that gap, you develop something the sources call the conceptual framework. I always found this part really interesting. It's like drawing the map of your study before you even collect any data. Shows how everything fits together theoretically.
It really is. It's your visual argument, basically. For our solar panel example, the framework would show your variables. You'd have temperature and maybe sunlight intensity as your independent variables, the things you think cause a change. And they influence solar panel efficiency, which is your dependent variable, the thing that gets changed. And crucially, you might also map out something like panel type, maybe silicon versus thin film. That could be a moderator. Meaning the effect of temperature might be different depending on the type of panel. Getting this framework right is key because it actually guides which statistical tests you'll end up using later.
Right, which leads us straight into step 3, formulating measurable objective. So here we need to separate the big picture goal, the general objective, from the smaller, bite-sized, measurable sub-goals, the specific objectives.
And these objectives then shape how you frame your actual inquiry. If your study is more exploratory, maybe trying to understand a situation, you'd pose research questions like, how does temperature affect efficiency? It's open-ended. But if you're doing a quantitative study, aiming to test a specific prediction, you need a hypothesis. Something testable, like lower temperatures significantly reduce the efficiency of silicon-based solar panels. That statement, that hypothesis, becomes the anchor for your whole design.
Okay, perfect. So foundation is set. Now we move into phase 2, designing the blueprint. This covers steps 4, 5, and 6. This is where we decide exactly how we're going to gather the evidence and make sure it's good quality evidence.
Right. Step 4 is selecting the research design. The first big choice is usually qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. Are you exploring meanings and perceptions through interviews? That's qualitative. Or are you measuring things, collecting numbers, testing hypotheses? That's quantitative. Or maybe a mix of both.
Okay. And once you've made that big choice, you pick a specific type, right? Like descriptive, analytical, maybe a case study, or an experimental design. For our solar panel hypothesis, where we want to show that lower temperature causes lower efficiency, we'd need that quantitative experimental design, wouldn't we?
Yes, exactly. And the really critical part here, the nugget, is the justification. You can't just pick a design. You have to explain why it's the right choice for your specific question and objectives. So you'd say, we chose an experimental design because it's the only way to actually manipulate the independent variable, the temperature, maybe in a controlled lab setting.
And then precisely measure the effect on the dependent variable, the power output.
Precisely. That justification is what gives your study credibility. It convinces reviewers, funders, whoever, that your approach is sound.
Got it. Okay, design chosen. Now we need participants, or in our case, solar panels.
Right.
Step 5, population and sampling. Our target population might be all solar panels installed in northern regions. But yeah, we can't test every single one. We need a sample.
And the key choice here, simplifying a bit, comes down to what you want to do with the results. If you need your findings to apply to that entire population of northern panels, if you want to generalize, you have to use probability sampling. That means every panel in that population has a known non-zero chance of being selected. Like picking names out of a hat, basically.
Right.
Random, stratified, cluster sampling. Those are types.
Okay, but what if I don't need to generalize? What if I'm more interested in, say, really understanding the oldest solar farms in the area because they might have unique long-term performance issues?
Then you'd likely use non-probability sampling. You're using your judgment, or maybe convenience, to pick specific cases because you want in-depth insight, not necessarily numbers that represent everyone. Understanding that difference needing broad generalizability versus needing deep, specific understanding is really fundamental to choosing your sampling method.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, step 6, data collection methods and tools. So this could be using instruments in our experiment, like sensors measuring output, or maybe collecting secondary data, like old maintenance reports.
Yeah, whatever method you choose, the tool you use has to be reliable and valid. Which brings us to our next essential nugget, pilot testing of tools. Honestly, this step gets skipped way too often, and it's probably the single easiest way to avoid a complete disaster later on.
Okay, tell us more. Why is pilot testing so critical? It's like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly. And it's much, much cheaper to find problems on a small scale. You test your new temperature sensor setup, or maybe your survey questions if you were doing human research, on just a handful of cases that are similar to your main study group. If that sensor software keeps crashing, or if 5 people tell you, question 3 on your survey makes no sense.
You fix it before the real thing.
Yes. Before you spend months and thousands of dollars collecting data from hundreds or thousands of panels or people, it's too late to fix a broken tool after you've used it. Pilot testing massively improves your data quality because it helps ensure your tool is actually valid and reliable before you deploy it at scale.
Okay, validated tools, solid blueprint. We're ready for phase 3, execution and interpretation. Steps 7 through 10. Time to actually collect the data and then, well, figure out what it means.
Step 7 is data collection itself, but with a focus on integrity. You need to be systematic, follow your plan, record everything accurately. And the sources here really emphasize 2 key concepts, reliability and validity. They sound similar, but they're different.
Okay, reliability.
Yeah.
That's consistency, right? If I measure the panel's output 3 times quickly under the same conditions, I should get basically the same number each time.
Spot on. The measurement is consistent. But validity is about whether you're actually measuring the thing you intend to measure. Imagine your sensor is perfectly reliable, gives you the same reading every minute, rock solid.
Okay.
But what if it's actually measuring the air temperature next to the panel instead of the panel's surface temperature itself, which is what you cared about?
So it's reliable, but reliably wrong.
Exactly. Validity ensures you're hitting the target you aimed for. That means using calibrated instruments, following standard procedures, making sure you're capturing efficiency and temperature as you define them.
Got it. So once we have that high quality, reliable, and valid data, we move to step 8, data processing and analysis. Before the analysis fun starts, you have to clean it up, edit, maybe code qualitative notes into numbers, classify things.
Right. Then the analysis itself usually starts with descriptive statistics, just summarizing what you found. What's the average efficiency? What's the range of temperatures? Making graphs and charts. Then, if you stated hypotheses back in step 3, you move to inferential statistics. These are the tests like t-tests, ANOVA, regression, that let you make inferences about the bigger population based on your sample. And if you did, say, interviews about maintenance problems, you'd use qualitative analysis, like looking for common themes in the transcripts.
Okay. And step 9 feels like the climax for our experiment, testing
Yeah.
hypotheses. This is where we see if the data actually backs up our prediction.
It is kind of the moment of truth in quantitative work. You're essentially setting up a statistical battle between two opposing ideas. There's the null hypothesis, H, that's the default, boring state.
Yeah.
Temperature has zero effect on panel efficiency, nothing's happening. And then there's your alternative hypothesis, that's your actual prediction. Temperature does have a significant effect.
Okay, so we run our statistical test, let's say a t-test, comparing efficiency at high versus low temps, and it gives us this number, the p-value. How do we decide?
You set a threshold beforehand, usually 0.05, it's sort of the standard. If the p-value from your test ends up being less than or equal to 0.05,
Low p-value.
then you have enough statistical evidence to reject the null hypothesis. H, you're basically saying, look, the chance of seeing a result this strong just by random luck is less than 5%. That's too unlikely. So I'm rejecting the no effect idea.
Right, so if our solar panel experiment yields a p-value of, say, 0.01,
Yep.
we reject the null. We can confidently say our data supports the idea that temperature did significantly reduce the panel's energy output. We found something.
You found statistically significant evidence, exactly, which leads to step 10. Presenting those findings. You need to do it clearly. Use visuals tables, line graphs showing that downward trend as temperature drops below freezing, and crucially, you don't just dump raw numbers, you explain what they mean. Panel efficiency decreased consistently as the temperature fell below 0 degrees C. And you absolutely must connect it back to the literature you reviewed in step 2. Does your finding support what others found? Does it extend it? Or maybe it contradicts previous work. You have to place your piece in the larger puzzle.
Okay, that brings us to our final phase, phase 4, finalizing and integrity, steps 11 through 13. Shorter phase, but sounds incredibly important for the long haul.
Definitely. Steps 11 and 12 are about the conclusion, recommendations, and the actual report rating. The structure needs to be clear and standardized: abstract, intro, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. The goal is transparency, so someone else could, in theory, replicate your study.
And the sources brought up a really interesting modern example here. Not solar panels, but using machine learning for predicting heart disease.
Huh.
The conclusion highlighted a key finding from their process, that feature engineering, where humans intelligently create meaningful variables, like a BMI ratio,
Right, using domain knowledge.
was actually more impactful for prediction accuracy than just using a more complex algorithm, like a giant neural network.
That's a fantastic point. It shows that the careful methodological work the human intelligence applied early on, like knowing which variables to combine or transform based on clinical understanding, linking back to that conceptual framework idea can often beat just throwing raw computing power at a problem. It really speaks to the lasting value of understanding the subject matter deeply.
Yeah. And because it was a medical application, the sources also stressed the need for explainable AI, using models like decision trees that are easier to understand.
Transparency.
Because doctors and patients need to trust the system if it's making health recommendations.
And that ties directly into integrity, which is why step 12 also covers proper citation-style APA, IEE, MLA, whatever the standard is. This isn't just formatting. It's the core mechanism for academic honesty. Giving credit where it's due, allowing others to trace your sources, avoiding plagiarism. You list everything meticulously.
Which brings us to the final step, step 13, ethical considerations. The absolute non-negotiable, especially if you're dealing with people or sensitive data, like those heart disease records.
Absolutely critical. You have to guarantee informed consent. People have to know what they're signing up for and agree freely. And confidentiality protecting identities, often using anonymous codes instead of names. This isn't just box ticking. It's about recognizing the power imbalance. The researcher holds the data, potentially sensitive information about people's lives. So academic honesty is baked into this. Never, ever fabricate data or tweak results. And you must report limitations or unexpected problems, even if they make your findings look weaker.
Right. And for research involving humans, the sources mention the need for approval from an ethical review committee or institutional review board, an IRB.
Yeah, that external oversight is crucial. It ensures the quest for knowledge doesn't override the rights, safety, and dignity of the people participating.
Wow, okay, so that's the whole journey, from that initial spark of an idea all the way through to a conclusion that's built on a foundation of rigorous ethical methodology.
Exactly. It's the infrastructure, really, that allows us to build reliable, trustworthy knowledge.
So we've taken that potentially daunting 13-step process and broken it down into those 4 key phases: foundation, blueprint, execution, and integrity. It really provides a powerful lens for looking at any claim based on research.
Mhm. And maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to take away from this. Now that you have this framework in mind, try applying it the next time you see a headline reporting the results of a new study. Don't just focus on what they claim they found. Ask yourself some of these questions. How precisely was the problem defined? How did they get their sample? Were they aiming to generalize or for specific insights? Did they mention pilot testing their tools? What was the null hypothesis they were testing against?
That's a great point. Using this research methodology framework isn't just for researchers writing papers. It's probably one of the best tools out there for improving your critical thinking and your data literacy in everyday life. Keep digging, keep asking questions, and keep exploring. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.